Greetings and welcome everybody to this live recording. If you're tuned in on YouTube, you will be listening to us on the aBlogtoWatch Weekly live channel. You get to see all the behind the scenes, the pre and the post match. So we will start our recordings in the way we normally do, with a massive round of applause as we count ourselves in as we go along. So here we go, gentlemen. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
I think it's time Ricky reminded everyone why we're doing this, because I believe that there will be at least a few people out there who think that we actually are just applauding ourselves.
We're ABBA.
We do it so that in theory we can sync all the audio together, because we get all this off as individual tracks, and then we try to clean it up from the dubious audio that will be going out live streamed. I'll also say that Ripley, a warning has popped up on my screen to say you may need to refresh your browser, whatever that means, if you're getting an error message. Disappear.
See you next week.
So Ripley is already away. What a great start to the show. We're a man down already. We'll see if he returns. But we are joined by the travelling Wilbury that is Ariel, has rejoined us this week. Ariel, where were you last week? What was your excuse?
I had to remember. I was in Toronto, and cool. I went to visit Marathon Watch, which is a great company that, I was thinking about this because they just did their Jeep collaboration a few months ago. They announced it. And they did a really good job, and I realized, that's the first time they've done any collaboration of any kind. So it's actually kind of amazing that they did so good right off the bat. Commercial collaboration, not like a, military logo on there.
A TV show.
Yeah, and then I'm off to Vienna, where I'll be seeing David, and we'll be partying with all the Viennese. I'm not sure.
Viennese
there.
And you don't party with them, you waltz with them.
You waltz with them. We will be poorly waltzing in Vienna shortly.
Good stuff. Well, there's Ripley back to join us. But before we go to Ripley and his great world, David, how are you this week?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. You appear to be repping some 1990s football gear.
Yeah, I wanted to fix my microphone to something, and this was the closest and the least warm, so I picked it up.
Is it crinkly, though? Am I going to have to edit out a whole load of crinkly noises because it looks crinkly? Or is it soft?
I'm frozen like this. And then
we could get David a bandolier, one of those bullet things that goes across your chest. That would be perfect to kind of mount right here.
Yeah, and just put roads on it, back up.
Chest belt. You could look like a conquistador or something.
Well, Ripley is here in spirit, if not visibly, which is great for a live show on the internet. So I don't know, Ripley, can you hear us? Come in, Ripley. Nope, Ripley is not there. So
this was a bad idea. I mean, I can't believe that we somehow we all came up with it. Sure, let's update your browser in the middle of a freaking live. It's like a DJ going out, and it's like, oh, okay, my deck is saying I should update it. Sure, let's update it.
That's it. Let's update Zoom or Riverside as we go along. So, yeah, we'll see if we hear from Ripley at some stage, but hopefully he'll be able to join us.
Maybe
he'll just have to send smoke
He's
signals
very
or something.
Persistent. It's good.
He is persistent. He's dogged.
We'll be opening all the fangirl letters in the meantime. Where's Ripley? He's the only one I tune in for.
Save Ripley.
Ripley's the one we love. We only want to hear from him.
Yeah. Save Ripley's wall.
Well, Ripley's wall. He's become famous, and he is repping a significant amount of clothing today. So we do need those videos for those YouTube.
We want
clips.
to encourage brands, get in the clothing business. You're most of the way there. I'd say that a lot of enthusiasts would spend money on a quality garment from the brand, not just like a labeled shirt, but like a quality garment that somehow fits the theme of the brand. I mean, the Tag Heuer kind of racing jacket makes sense. Breitling has done bomber jackets, but every brand should have their own set of things that make sense. I'm glad Ripley's not here because we'd go into a whole thing with Philip Plein in the shoes.
So I have now let him back in, but we'll see whether he actually appears. There he is. Hey. We're just talking about you, young man. No, we don't have any.
And he's not talking to us.
all this way and we can't hear him. He's only on mute. And he's off again. Oh dear. Ripley is experiencing some connectivity issues according to this heads up. No kidding, Sherlock. There we go. So you did get to see Ripley briefly there in his Breitling gear. We'll see what happens as to whether he appears. We might need to stop and start again. But there we go. In the meantime, though, actually, just to follow on from what you're talking about, Ariel, so what clothing would Rolex produce or Patek?
A blue suit.
A blue suit.
Yes.
Dark blue suit.
A
for
dark
Rolex.
blue suit. Fashionable, well done. It's got to be blue. Basically, you have to start with the regulation Rolex office, outfit. That's what you need to wear. That is the standard garb. I understand that just recently they had a somewhat relaxed dress code, but just so people know, if you worked at Rolex headquarters for many, many years and you weren't wearing a blue suit, you didn't work at Rolex.
What about Patek then? What would be the Patek?
We're gonna go with a gray suit with very colorful ties. Yeah,
very colorful ties. Oh, gray suits with colorful ties.
Yeah, really nice wool, nice thin wool, but definitely gray.
Is Patek still giving out ties? The Watches and Wonders. They used to give out ties every single year. So,
yeah, that's a good point. I don't think they do anymore.
Right.
They used to give some great stuff out. There was this decision that was made some years ago, not like actually sort of a decision where it's like, media gets too much stuff. Let's only leave those gifts for retailers and what they call VIPs, which are basically just customers. So if anybody wants to rally out there, it should be hashtag give swag to media again. That doesn't really roll off the tongue. We'll work on it.
And so, what item of clothing do you think we're missing production, and who should produce it?
I want more bathrobes. That's definitely up there. Towels. I mean, Hermes get a good towel. Nice to look at, not as good to use. I think that dress shirts are missing. Obviously, I love jackets, so I'll never say no to jackets of any kind. Enough of the hats. I think that there's too many of the baseball caps, for sure. And I would definitely think well of a watch brand if I wore them in the form of socks each day. Yeah. Which
actually is a great point. There were some who were giving out socks a number of years ago. I'm not sure who it was. Yeah. So it's a pointless exercise then.
I've gotten belts before, which can be cool. The kind of branded belt buckle. That could be cool. The belts, if it's fancy belts, it's hard to get a belt right. Because the belt, you could theoretically do one size fits all. That's a problem they have. They're like, well, shirts, we have to make a bunch of sizes. I'm like, well, yes. You make different size watches, don't you?
And do you think on average watch journalists and the media are of larger size or of above or below the median size of a human being?
Oh, they got to go all the way down to like basically children's sizes into the multiple X's. I mean, there's really no medium area.
No medium area. Right. Well, Ripley is still struggling to join us, but I'm sure he'll keep trying. But let's begin with some thoughts from Ariel. And we'll have a wee look at The Silent War. This sounds like a Netflix series. The silent war between watch brands and retailers unfold as the industry eyes America. First up, Ariel, why is this America specific in your article?
I really like to write about the things I know most about, and I don't want to claim to know a lot of details in terms of markets around the world. This is by no means just in America, but I can't speak as authoritatively as to what's going on in parts of Asia and the Middle East and Europe. In a lot of places, the third-party retailer is quite strong. The Middle East is a very good example of that. India is a good example of that because they have various types of laws and regulations where the culture is just more amenable to doing business in that way. So that's really the reasons I'm focusing on America. Also, I'm focusing on America because the United States is a very big market. It's the biggest market. And sort of what happens in the United States matters quite a bit Actually, there's a spacing issue there. So as you're looking at the article, there's supposed to be more space in the paragraphs. That's actually a technical issue that we're working on. So something's broken behind the scenes there.
Just like Ripley's audio.
Just
right
like Ripley. Not lazy editing. Actually, a technical issue we're working on. I try to spend the article to discuss the context as well as both sides of the issue. I did not want to make it look as though I was on one side or the other. I just wanted to frame the issue. And really, it's a matter of a different philosophy of what do you sell, like a product versus a service. And in a lot of instances, people are buying a service and not a product, in the sense they're buying an experience that makes them feel good. And any old watch that is a result of that service is something they're going to want to get. Brands like to think, no, they want this design, they want these materials, they have to have this specific watch, which is actually less true. So I'm of the opinion that a large amount of the time when people buy a watch, they're more likely to buy from a third-party authorized dealer than directly from a brand boutique. Brands want to maximize their returns and their revenue, which has various types of understandable reasons behind it. But I make the argument that they actually might make more money if they just, stuck with a wholesale model, which is work with authorized dealers. There's a lot of little nuances to this. There's a lot of nuances in psychology and cultural different expectations from European managers and what goes on in America. But the reason this is such a huge issue is there's a sort of a stalemate where brands and retailers have sort of just dug their feet in the sand, dug their heels in. And what is at stake is the growth and development of the North American market, meaning more watches could be sold, more customers could be reached. There could be a lot better performance than what there is today if there was more synergy between these entities and less of sort of the silent combat. So that's really, I think, why it's important is for the foreseeable future, the United States will be the world's biggest export market for luxury timepieces. And this sort of strange combat between brands and retailers is thwarting growth. There could be a lot more money being made if they figured out a solution to this. So that's why I thought this was so salient right now.
So have we seen any brands go right through the process yet? They've decided to step away from the kind of cooperation with a wholesaler, with a luxury provider, do it themselves and then go, that's a really bad idea, and go back to the kind of, let's sell via Watches of Switzerland or
that's a very good question. There's definitely brands that have sort of been permanently in the middle where they've played both grounds. They've had authorized dealers and they've sold direct, and they've been sort of vacillating and it's been unclear to them. Certain brands have gone all in on direct-to-consumer. Richard Mille is probably the most famous one for doing so. They did it in a very brazen way. And then you've had Audemars Piguet that sort of followed very much in a similar footsteps. More recently, Along and Zona has done this. Wow. And then you have a number of, we'll call them smaller micro brands that sell online directly only, but not necessarily through their own stores. Wow. So those companies are still relatively new to what they're doing. I'd say Richard Mille is the most mature in that I don't think they've got to the point where they would reverse tack, but it would almost be impossible for them to do so. But the reality is I've heard stories of it happening. So there's a lot of brands that decide to go direct when they think times are good. And then when times are bad, I hear from retailers all the time that, they're getting calls from someone that like just a year or two earlier had cut off ties with them, be like, you guys, you think you can buy some inventory? Maybe you want to work together again. The retailer's like, you come crawling back, do ya? So there's a lot of that mentality happening. So there is definitely a lot of vacillation. What I can say is that the third party model, the wholesale model, the authorized dealer model, if you will, tends to be very sticky, and a lot of brands return to it. And then, of course, you have the examples of the Patek Philippe's and Rolex of the world that exclusively work that way. And even if they have stores that are branded for them, it's run by an independent retailer somewhere. So all those Rolex and Patek Philippe boutiques that you see, for the most part, are not owned by those companies. They're operated by an individual under, pretty strict rules. But in exchange, Rolex promises a certain degree of high sell-through and demand, which they've been able to deliver on over the last couple of years. So sort of an answer to your question.
Yeah, Ripley, welcome back. Let's just hear your audio. Oh, very loud. Let's turn you down a bit for everybody listening online. There we go. Yes, Ripley is back. Ripley, just we don't do a wrist check on this show, so to speak, but we will do a fashionista check. So, what are you wearing?
Well, like a good Swiss watch brand, I've been resurrected several times, so hopefully I'm here to stay. I'm in chronometer theme, so we've got Formex on the hat, Breitling on the shirt, and the watch is Brellum, who only produce chronometers. So
that's cool.
Ripley, cost certified Ripley. Yeah. Good stuff. Ripley, David, your experience over the years of the changing scene in how watches are sold, being sold to you by people that, from my experience, multi-brand stores tend to have people in them that love watches because they want to sell all different kinds of watches. Whereas I feel when you go more to a mono-brand store, these are people that love the brand. They don't necessarily love the watches the brand sells, but they have to. They can't say, oh, well, rather than this, could I interest you not necessarily in this Panerai, but in this Omega? They don't have that option. They have to love everything that's there. They're not allowed to have favourites. But what's your experience over the years of the difference of the way the market has been changing? David?
Well, I personally prefer a multi-brand boutique almost all the time. I prefer to have the choice, the options, the ability to go and compare two watches side by side right then and there. And somehow I feel like this is only personal experience, of course, but as though the staff was also a little bit more active there. In a monobrand boutique, you're already in our net, so let's find something that you might like or you might not like, but we have you already, So sometimes I get that vibe. Whereas in a multi-brand boutique, I've worked in sales in electronics for 6 years, so I know what it is like to represent one brand versus the others, and how to sell or how to move and how to work with customers. And it was a whole lot more fun, when you have competition within the house as well. So I prefer multi-brand boutiques, that's for sure.
Ripley, have you ever preferred a mono-brand boutique over a multi-brand?
I mean, it can be nice if you really just want that one brand and want to really steep yourself in an extravagant boutique and learn more about that one brand specifically. But like David, if you're shopping for watches and it's not like you're looking for one specific thing, yeah, I'm almost always going to prefer multi-brand boutique. And I think being able to see two brands' watches side by side is sort of important in figuring out what in a watch is important to you. And, if you're at a Panerai boutique and you don't like a Luminor or a Radium, you're absolutely out of luck. Being able to see that contrasted against something else and say, well, what did you not like about those cases or, the watches, and seeing what you like in something else, that's just kind of part of the experience of finding something that you like. And that's, exponentially easier at a multi-brand boutique.
Well, Ariel, have you ever met anyone that prefers mono-brand over multi-brand? Just as an interesting question, I'll stick it in the show notes and on the Spotify vote as to whether anyone has a preference for mono over multi-brand.
There's people in the comments that have said they are. I agree with everyone here that I universally feel better in a multi-brand boutique, and if only for the reason that the person working at a brand boutique obviously works for the brand, and you feel like you need to be like on your best behavior, can't accidentally insult the brand, and there's really not that much you can say, like just go on and on about the same brand. Whereas you can more be like a watch buddy to someone that sells watches that is a multi-brand boutique. You recognize their loyalties to the store itself, not necessarily any one brand they carry. You can be a little bit more casual with them, and those types of easier conversations tend to lead to more sales. So I think that's one of the reasons that people feel more comfortable there. Also, there tends to be more to look at. I remember a time going to a multi-brand boutique where you just felt excited to learn about brands. Like, what do they have here? What models do they have? There tends to be a lot more of a limited selection at most of the mono brand boutiques. They try to make it that way on purpose, or they just tend to have less watches. If they pack a lot in there, they think it doesn't look as exclusive and sexy. So from just a sheer discovery standpoint, there's like a whole lot less to see there. And then you also have the different mentality is Are you there to celebrate the customer and you want to make them feel good and make them feel welcomed and that you want to help celebrate them, which is what third-party stores do? Or do you want to act as like a shrine to this important brand, the house of blah, blah, blah company? You are within our confines, are you good enough to don our art? And it's a very strange thing where you have to like prove yourself. And American consumers don't really like that. We like to sort of feel a little bit more empowered. We go into a store. We don't like to feel like we need to be on our best behavior. I mean, think about your average shopping mall. People walk in, they're wearing flip-flops, they're eating an ice cream. Last thing you want to do is get on their knees and be like, "Oh, person in suit, please make me feel worthy enough to wear your watch."
And so, to kind of conclude, what's the future? What's the future path? Is this just a cycle? People think they can make more money by going mono-brand and going wholly owned, and then eventually 10, 15 years from now, they'll go, wait a minute, we've now got this massive overhead. We need to do all of this training. We need to own all of this property, deal with all these landlords we were renting, all the rest of it. It would just be that much easier not to have entire divisions dedicated to retailing the watches, as opposed to we just attend Watches and Wonders and all the retailers come to us and they buy their stock and we can just focus on making watches. Or is this just going to be a cycle?
That's what everybody wants to know, of course, is where is this all going and what does the future hold? I wish I could tell you. I really wish I could. I think that what's important is that both of these models are attractive. The third-party wholesale model has history on its side. The let's sell direct consumer has, I guess you could say, the profit motive on its side. And you are going to be in a situation where there's going to be a fight for both of them to work. I think that conservatively speaking, it's always going to make sense to distribute your risk. So having someone buy inventory and sell it for you is probably going to be the easier, more sustainable way of doing business. And selling direct to consumers is going to be the harder way of doing things. It simply isn't going to be for everyone. So my suspicion is going to be that most are going to fall back into a wholesale model simply because, historically speaking, that tends to be what happens.
And other gentlemen on this call, David, Ripley, are you seeing anything in the micro brand side? Because obviously there's new brands coming through who need to make decisions. Christopher Ward only sell online. Number of brands only sell online. Take a brand like Fears, who sold online but now are moving into their own boutiques. Now are moving into being retailed in multi-brand stores. Is there a pull that some brands also need to resist of just stick with being online because that works for you? Whereas if you move into boutiques, then you're losing 20, 25% of your margin. Is there also a pull in that direction to advance brands
I have to comment on that before I let people say what they think. I'd love to hear their opinions. Many of the brands that start as direct-to-consumer online don't price their watches in a way that they can give a margin to a retailer that retailer would be happy with. So a company that sells their watch for $1,000 can't just take that same product and put it into a store and sell it at the same price and then give that retailer half that sale or something like that and then still make money. They don't operate with those types of multiples. So you either need to think ahead and price your watches high enough to have that margin, or you need to come out with entirely new watches or figure something else out. But if you start with a direct-to-consumer model and then transition to selling in stores, it's actually quite challenging based upon how you price your product. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say price points kind of vary, is going to determine it largely. As Ariel mentioned, if you start going direct to consumer, it's going to be quite a bit harder to figure out where to make up that difference in margin. But then also a lot of the micro brands, if you will, are inherently on the more affordable side of the spectrum. So there's just not as much margin to play with in the first place. If a brand's got built their reputation selling sub-$1,000 watches direct to consumer, there's really not enough, meat on the bone there to then bring it into a retailer's margins as well and maintain the same price point. Whereas a brand operating at, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, there might be a little bit more that they can do something or increase the price of a model enough to give that retailer something. But, you know, if you add $500 onto a $3,000 watch, no one's getting up in arms. You add $500 onto a $500 watch, your fan base is freaking out. So I think price point's kind of the big factor for it and what limits a lot of brands from making that decision.
Well, so final question to three of you. If you owned a watch brand, what would be your preference of where you sold it? Online only, mono brand, multi-brand? What would be your choice? David, where would you sell your David watch?
Probably online, because I would want anyone in the world to have access to what I'm doing.
Good answer. Ripley's stone-based, wooden-clad. You'd need to be like the Moser, the Icons, the Ripley Icons watch. As many brand references on it as possible with a stone dial. Where would you sell it?
Well, I mean, my first watch would be the Moser watch. I would just make that production watch, and you know, I feel
Still
like all the
dream.
lawsuits have already been filed. Yeah, at least I get one for
The
myself.
Franken watch?
Yes, absolutely. And then I'd make the Yu-Gi-Oh! Dual disc that Olympic guy came on. But that's aside the point. It would really just depend on the price point. If I had a watch where the quality of the good was superior to the point where I think people would need to see it in the metal to truly appreciate it, I might want to, obviously it'd be priced as such where I would want to have it in a retail environment. If I was selling watches sub $1,000, kind of just general sport and tool watches, I might want to just do it online, like David said, make it as accessible as possible and not have that barrier to entry where, people say, I'd love to buy it, but I just can't buy it because I can't get my hands on it in this country or something like that.
Ariel, I can imagine you, monobrand boutique, big throne, come, kneel to be able to get permission to buy my limited edition watch. Is that the way you'd go? Monobrand?
I'll answer this way. I'm of the philosophy that when you sell something, you should be dispassionate about that thing. I mean, you should like it, but it shouldn't be your own thing. Like when someone sells their own stuff, they usually try to sell it for too much. They usually embellish not as well. They're actually not very good. Like usually you're better if you're selling someone else's stuff. And I believe that if I was actually going to invest myself in creating things, it'd probably be wise for someone who's emotionally detached to sell it. So that means not me. That typically means some type of, wholesale relationship where you sell it to someone else who then wants to sell it. And then you can actually, if you do well that way, you could have a bunch of people around the world. I don't care about in person or online. For me, it all blends together. But I want people who buy it from me to then explain its virtues to the public, and then to develop their own customer bases so that when I came out with new stuff, they're excited about selling to their fans as opposed to me doing that. I think that by sharing with people, I will sort of bring in a larger army to push the thing that I like, because doing it myself is sort of lonely. Even if I get to earn everything, it's sort of that idea of like, would you rather have 100% of like 1,000 or, 10% of like, 10 million, and usually it's better to have a diluted share of something larger, and that's my philosophy towards it.
So Ariel's building a zombie army to sell his watches while David's sitting in his bedroom selling them online.
Something
Good
like that.
Stuff.
Hi, I'm Ariel Adams from aBlogtoWatch. I'd like to tell you about Bezel, the modern app for buying and selling authenticated high-end watches. Bezel isn't like other platforms. Bezel was designed exclusively for today's timepiece collectors and enthusiasts, offering choice, convenience, safety, and service. In addition to personally authenticating each timepiece sold on the marketplace, Bezel also offers a personal concierge service to walk you through any part of the watch buying or selecting process. Want something not currently listed on Bezel? Their concierge service is happy to seek one out for you. Buying and selling a watch can be scary as well as challenging, especially with all the options out there today. Bezel uses a modern, intuitive interface to deliver a class-leading technology experience that makes it simple and fun to search through available watches or list one you currently want to sell. Try Bezel today and discover what others like you are already excited about. Get the Bezel app or use the getbezel.com website. That's GetBezel.com. Thanks.
Right, let's move on. And Ripley, you are here So I am going to make you read this haiku.
Oh, yes.
Before we look at the watch. So Ripley, give us your best. You can see it on the screen there, I hope.
Rick, it's
Give
oh
us
my
your
god, it's
best.
so tiny. I'm on my phone. Oh,
Is it? I don't know if I can zoom in. Can I zoom in? Is that helpful?
this is closer than anyone needed to see me tonight. Okay.
Extreme close up.
Silver waters flow. Genbi valleys hues preserved. Time's beat echoes clear.
Okay, very well done. Now the question is, does that in any way reflect this particular watch, which is new from Grand Seiko? We're not going to play Guess the Price of the Seiko. We did haikus instead. This is hands-on Grand Seiko SLGH021 Evolution 9 Genbi Valley high beat watch. I'm guessing some watchmaker had a view of a valley called Genbi. Ariel, you got the hands-on with this. Extol its virtues or otherwise.
So this is the Grand Seiko high beat, which means they're 5 hertz movement, in the Evolution 9 case, which I'm pretty sure is a joke on the Beatles' Revolution 9, but maybe it's not. But I'm pretty sure.
Japanese, well known for their sense of humor of British
It's
culture.
so not.
I'm going to say it is because I want it to be.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I'm amused about in this was there's this dial, which is very pretty. It's sort of a lightish green with a little bit of blue. And Seiko had this picture of some water flowing in a river, presumably in the Genbi Valley, which inspired this. And I asked myself, do they come up with the dial first and then say, what does this remind you of, everyone? Or do they be like, hey, this water in this valley, let's figure out how to make a dial version of this? And both ways are presumably possible. I imagine one happens more than the other, Grand Seiko, and I'm used on this. I don't know if we'll get an answer. I think that if you had a bunch of other Grand Seikos, this might not add too much to it unless you really wanted this movement or you just really like this dial color. But if you haven't had one yet and you're thinking, let's get one, it's as nice a watch as any. I think the major complaints were that it's expensive. It's, about $10,000. As well as the fact that people wanted a little bit more from the bracelet. And I agree. At these price points, I think that Grand Seiko could deliver a better bracelet experience. They are developing new bracelets. They have shared that with me. In fact, multiple companies have, but it takes about as much time to come up with a new bracelet as it does an entire new watch, probably just a little bit less time than a movement. So these are known. Things like micro adjust or having more of a distinctive bracelet are coming soon. It's a perfectly competent daily wear. I would still prefer an electronic watch like the Spring Drive, which is a hybrid, or the Quartz from Grand Seiko, just because they're so freaking good at it. It's sort of like you have to have a bunch of those, and you're like, oh, I've never had a mechanical Grand Seiko, might as well try that. It's just sort of the lowest on my list. So it's a lovely watch, but I'm not sure it's where people are going to enter into the Grand Seiko brand.
Yeah, we didn't play Guess Price of Seiko, but would you have guessed anywhere near 10 grand, David?
10 grand on this? First, I would need to be absolutely sure that this is an actually new Grand Seiko. So sometimes I feel like they're just playing with us. It's like, was this not launched like 3 years ago? I quite like all of these, to be honest. I don't mind the bracelet too much. I mean, it's only 5 more years before they come up with a nice one. I like Grand Seiko very much. It's just they've become so big and so much time has passed that we've seen them become the villain in a way, right? They were the darling of everyone a couple of years ago, and now we're scrutinizing them. And I agree with all the scrutiny, to be honest. I think that they could do better in some ways, and we've also seen the prices just go up, and it's a little bit more difficult at this point to resonate with Grand Seiko, but it is a beautiful dial. I will give them that.
Yeah, it's a lovely watch, but I just don't see where there's $10,000 in this.
Look more closely.
I think I'm becoming increasingly stingy, which is saying something for a Scotsman. Ripley, 10,000 of your hard-earned dollars in this?
It's a bit more expensive than I thought. I know their prices are getting up there, but I don't see something that's like that tangibly different than what you get with a lot of their other offerings that are more in that like 6,000 to 8,000 range. So, Yeah, I would have guessed it was probably closer to that, but I'm also not familiar enough with the Genbi River or whatever.
Genbi.
So yeah, maybe that's where the extra few thousand comes in.
So you're saying if it's an amazing resort, like you're willing to pay more?
Maybe if I go see the glorious Genbi water and it looks
The
just
best hot
like
springs, the best grain, the best everything, the peaches there. Oh my gosh.
if you walked up to the Genbi waters and it looked just like that Grand Seiko dial and you were like, wow, that's pretty special, I might see it there. But if I go there and it's just this like off blue liquid, I'm going to be a little bit let down.
I'm sorry, if you walked up to a body of water and it looked like this, you'd wonder what was floating in it.
It looks partially frozen, you know?
I was going to say, unless it's frozen, then I'm concerned that this is actually some sort
There's been a
of
spill.
So you
muddy
think the dial came
swamp.
first and the Genbi Valley part came second? Okay.
I've never seen the Genbi Valley. I can't speak to it, but if it looks like this, yeah, I'm here for it.
We recommend a Grand Seiko field trip to the Genbi Valley. We have some academic determinations to come to.
I would love for them to tour me all around Mount Iwate, take me to the Genbi Valley, let me see the things, and let me then judge the dials.
Here's a major cause for concern. If I Google Genbi Valley, it's just the watch that comes up.
Yeah, I have found
Wait a
some
minute.
pictures.
Is this like an anime valley? Does it not really exist?
Okay, I'm not sure. See, this is a shutter. I've got some images, but they're all Shutterstock. I'm not sure what YouTube's rule is to showing Shutterstock images.
Not one single
live.
thing.
But
so the most notable thing about the valley is this: now that this watch exists,
is the watch. Yeah, you Google Genbi Valley. I mean, yeah. Okay, so let's do it this way. You Google Genbi Valley. I'll share this screen. And literally, that's what you get. Genbi Valley, it's all Grand Seiko.
Oh my
There's
God.
a little image
Genbi
there.
Valley needs to step up its SEO game. I mean, what are you doing,
Exactly.
Genbi Valley?
Exactly. Where's the Genbi Valley tourist board when you need them? It does, from the images of the actual valley, look rather too green.
Also, this is not the first
for my
Genbi Valley
liking.
watch, apparently.
oh yeah, there's
multiple of
a
them.
lot of different ones. Two, three?
What's bizarre is that there's one on Time Zone. It says public forum, so let's use that. But everything else is a Shutterstock image, as if no one else is allowed. There's a picture of the Genbi Valley, where Genbi Valley in the Iwate Prefecture, where I thought it was suggesting that Grand Seikos were made by the waterside, but no, they're made in vaguely the same area as the Genbi. Yeah, it does look a bit too green for my liking. If I was in Scotland and saw water that looked that colour, I wouldn't be going anywhere near it. I certainly wouldn't be making a watch that colour. I'd be treating it. It'd be going via a sewage plant or just being poured out as
For
far
every
away direct
watch
into
that
the
you
sea as
get,
possible.
Grand Seiko will take a little bit of money to help treat the water in the Genbi Valley. That's part of what you do. That's why it's so expensive. It's a big cleanup job.
1 yen
There's
dedicated.
There's a strategy. There's a strategy.
Hi, this is Mark from LongIslandWatch.com. Does my voice sound familiar? You might know me from my YouTube videos. I've been selling watches online since 2001 and have grown to become the first place watch enthusiasts visit when they want to make a purchase. Although my education background is in engineering, I learned all my retail prowess from my father, who was also a business owner and watch lover. Long Island Watch features watches that enthusiasts like you enjoy from a wide variety of brands. Throw in fair pricing and the worry-free ownership that we provide, and you'll see why we have remained a reliable source for watches in the industry. My staff and I have decades of watch knowledge that you will be hard-pressed to find anywhere else. We are enthusiasts first and treat you how you want to be treated. We've got the most desirable models from the big players, such as Seiko, Citizen, and Bulova. But you know the real value lies in the more esoteric brands, such as Marathon, Formex, Islander, Phoebus, Laco, Damasco, and others. So keep in touch until you are ready to get your next timepiece. Could be tomorrow, could be next week. Our best deals are found in our members-only newsletter that you can sign up for today at longislandwatch.com. Thanks for listening.
Well, we're going to go to invite some of the gents on shortly, but before we do, let's have a look at this. Ripley, this is one of yours.
Yes.
Go explain. the Hautlence Retrovision 47 watch. This strikes me as a good idea at the time. I'm not sure it's, explain. Old-fashioned radio.
Well, basically, yeah. So they, back for Watches and Wonders, they created this piece unique version of this, which was inspired by this like 1940s, radio broadcast receiver, which had this very marble Bakelite piece. It was never supposed to be offered to the public. It was basically just done as a talking piece for the show. People talked about it. It looks quite striking, got enough attention. The feedback was quite positive. So they're creating this as a limited edition, which is a commercially available version. But it sort of steps its game up a bit versus the prototype. So it's a hand painted titanium case. That's that lurid color of green. Grade 5 for the case. Grade 23, which interestingly enough is what they use in like surgical applications for the grill, the frame, and the little handles on it. Of course, there's a flying tourbillon in there because it's Hautlence, and it's got the a double balance spring because they're owned by the same folks that also own Moser. There's some interesting loom on there in the radio waves. Really interesting piece. Obviously, they're not making that many of them, so it's not like this has to have massive commercial appeal. But it's cool that they're making it. And if you look at the vintage inspiration of the actual radio receiver, it very much is the wristwatch version of it. It's not in any way loosely inspired. It's almost kind of a one-to-one watch version of it.
It looks like the kind of watch that Wallace and Gromit would have on.
That's the best compliment
wrists.
anyone's given that watch, by the way.
and it's cool from that point of view. Is it $66,000? I just can't think you would actually wear it more than once. Just strikes me as a one and done. It's
Christmas
a 66.
comes
It's like
once a
it's like
year.
the wristwatch version of a ball gown. You wear it to that one event, and then you don't know what to do.
And then you wear it on
Exactly.
Christmas. Yeah, you wear it on Christmas if you celebrate, once a year, there you go. It's bright red and green. And it kind of plays into that nostalgia of like a Christmas story type of thing, I think it's perfect.
If you have
It's a
fond
bit
memories
annual.
of being electrocuted by your radio on Christmas, wear this watch.
I would be more impressed had you actually been able to, like an old Seiko, been able to plug some headphones into and listen to the radio. I mean, you must be able to make micro receivers nowadays that you could do that with. Now that, a bit of Bluetooth technology and an Hautlence, that would have been impressive. And it wouldn't cost that much more. There's plenty of room in the case, clearly. It's
It
nearly
would play
empty, this case.
one track. It would just be the sound of the watchmaker, putting in screws and things like that. It'd be like ASMR or something.
No, it would be like all of Ed's adverts for Moser, just like the soundtrack for all of them saved onto it, so you could listen to him talking about
They've done
Swiss
adverts
cheese.
where they've spoken.
On Moser, have you never seen any of you? Please tell me you've seen Moser's video adverts.
No.
You have never lived if you've not seen Ed dressed up in lederhosen going around talking about money.
What?
It's like, you've never seen it? How
I
can you
have
be
no
a
idea
wa-
what you're talking about. I
how
believe
can
you. I
be
just
a-
have not.
How can you be a watch journalist and not have seen these videos, Ariel?
I ignore
This is a
social media. It's
scandal.
very simple.
I don't think
we
it's
will-
a bad thing to not consume advertising too much when you're a watch journalist. So I give you that, Ariel. But
That's
it's going to be
true.
a fun one when you see it.
They email me enough stuff, right? I am
Yeah.
aware of what's going on with Moser. My philosophy is they don't share it with me via email. They're probably not very proud of it. And that's okay. I won't dig too deep.
Well, I will. We will now.
But tell
I'm
me
not
more
sure.
about these fantastic lederhosen.
Yeah, I will. I will try and find them, and if we don't play them in this show as a fade out, then we'll send them to you later on. David, if you weren't going to buy this watch, but you wanted something similar, who would you have to go to?
I would go to Kickstarter with $660 and just be a tsar or an oligarch and just spend it on all kinds of wacky watches and just get what I want out of it.
I would just
what I
find
would
an
do.
old Casio watch that actually had some radio receiver in it and had a similar shape and call it a day.
Yes. Good stuff. Right, we're going to look at one more watch before we do Hit Miss Maybe. and that is one you have written about Ripley. New release Bell & Ross BR03 diver watches. For some reason, at the moment, I just love everything Bell & Ross. That's my cue. Bell & Ross, send me stuff. A hat. I don't have any hats, so send me a Bell & Ross hat. I don't know whether it's just because they stick to the knitting in being just this little bit. It's quirky enough without being a model of a 1940s radio receiver, and just has something about it. But what do you think of this new diver from Bell & Ross?
Well, it's good. I mean, this is basically just an updated generation of the existing dive watch that they had, but I think the updates are worthwhile. You get a bit more distinctly shaped hands, a bit more legibility there. You get the new generation of the movement. It's still based on that SW300, but obviously it's the same version we discussed on this the Artline version. So you get a longer power reserve. It's the old one was I was a fan of the old generation, so they shouldn't have changed it too much. This very much seems like the Rolex way of incremental updates, but don't change the recipe that was a success in the first place. So I think it's all good. You get them in steel, 3 different dial colors. You get it in black ceramic, and then you also get a full lume dial in black ceramic. But the pricing makes absolutely no sense because the price premium for the black ceramic case is like a couple $100 more than the price premium for just the lume dial. So it's, I like the watches. The price premiums make no sense, but I think they're a great new generation for this. And if you like the old one, you'll probably like the new one.
These wear really well. Ariel, your experience with Bell & Ross?
I actually have one of these watches on my desk right now. So I have the ceramic one. And these are nice. The BR3 case in this generation is very wearable. I liked it a lot when it first came out. What I really like about this is it's a very pretty tool watch. So it's got great proportions on it. It's very legible. You don't have a bunch of shiny surfaces on the dial of this version, yet it looks very nice as well visually. So this is sort of Bell & Ross at their best, where it is a cool tool, but it also has a wonderful visual aesthetic to it. So these are actually kind of great, and it's unfortunately just going to require people actually having to wear and see these, because I think the problem is that Bell & Ross, after they originally launched the BR1 and BR3, well over 10 years ago, I don't know that they did enough to tell people, like, it's time to re-experience it. It's time to learn it again. I think it's important to remember that in around 2004, 2005, I think when the BR1 originally came out, it was insanely hot. It was very popular. People were very shocked and awed by it. It had a very big effect on the market, and Bell & Ross has not been able to recapture that. So I'm wondering what they can do to sort of reintroduce this shape, because it's surprisingly cool, and it had, again, an enormous impact on the market about 20 years ago now.
David?
Yeah, I like these. I sort of wish that they were as popular, as cool as they used to be. I'm rooting for Bell & Ross, and I really don't know why. it's just something I like. I like modular designs where you can modulate things a little bit just to find your exact taste and preference, and but that takes a very solid foundation, and I think some of these are exactly that. And also, I've reviewed some of their relatively more high-end stuff, like the BRX one, I think it was, and the quality of execution was very, very high, even for the money, which was, it was not a cheap watch by any stretch of the imagination. So Bell & Ross is, has turned from this very popular trending thing into this well-kept secret in a way that people have been ignoring it, because it's like you have these ups and downs and phases in a design, and I can see Bell & Ross coming back in the next couple of years a little bit, unless they screw it up like Panerai did. Let's hope that does not happen.
What are you saying?
I think they're very similar to Panerai. I think they're very similar to Panerai in that regard. They both have
just a quarter of the price.
Yeah, but they both have this very similar or very distinct case shape that gets adapted to these different types of executions, depending if they want to go more dressy or tooly. But there's only so many watches that have a profile that you can kind of spot and identify from across the room. Bell & Ross has it. And if you want like a tool-oriented non-round watch, they're kind of one of the de facto brands. It's like a tough Cartier, if you will. So I'm also rooting for them. I'd love to see them kind of make a
Good stuff. Well, making a return elsewise is some folk for Hit Miss Maybe. So let's have a wee look. Let's let Kevin in and see if Guy is around as well. I believe he's joining us this morning. There we go. There's Guy. Oh, here we come. Here we go. Morning, Guy. How are you doing?
Good. I'm very impressed with Ripley's Eco Straw
Good
that he's got there.
And Kevin is still logging on. If he has the same amount of problems as we had with Ripley, he'll probably never make it. Yes, Kevin is experiencing connectivity issues, so we will see what happens with Kevin. We seem to be blighted by the tech. Well, let's crack on with our first Hit Miss Maybe. I'll share the screen. So first up is going to be the Zenith Defy 0G. Ariel, you reviewed this. What are your thoughts?
So this model came out, I think it was about 2018, 2019. The original one came out back during the Terry Natoff era, which was this controversial CEO that came out with some mostly unattractive designs. But this watch was originally called, it had Extreme in the name. It was called the 0G Tourbillon, even though it wasn't really a tourbillon. It was huge. It had this crazy bubble. That watch then evolved into something called the Christophe Colomb, which was another pretty insane series from Zenith. This was a more classic version. And I remember one of them had some pretty wild art on the dial, also with the bubble. And the idea is that it's sort of always supposed to stay up. So it's not a tourbillon in the sense that it spins by itself, but it's affected by gravity and is weighted on the bottom. And the idea is that the balance wheel is always supposed to sort of point up and remain in this horizontal position for ideal accuracy. I don't really know how it performs. It really depends. But it sort of spins around in a fun way on the wrist. This is the smallest version of that movement that Zenith has been able to create. It has no special bubbles or anything like that in the front and back. It's not the thinnest watch in the world, but it's definitely wearable compared to some of those other weird things that literally had a tumor in it. So this is the gold version. It's not crazy expensive in the scheme of things. But yeah, that's the recent Defy 0G from Zenith.
Good stuff. Well, Kevin is not actually on the screen, so he'll need to shout as to whether he's voting Hit Miss or Maybe. But let's give this a vote. So is this a hit, a miss, or a maybe? Hits, maybes. Kevin is voting how? Kevin is voting a hit. Right, let's go round the room. David, how'd you vote and why?
I voted a hit. I just love this series, and it also reminded me of those wonky Christophe Colomb ones. I took some amazing pictures of those back at, I think it was Couture or in Vegas a number of years ago. I like the concept of 0G, the stupid name, the weird realization, the whole thing is just magic, and it flies me back to that era in watches and watch movement development that is not over, but it's died right down for the last number of years.
Ariel, having handled it, did it stay a hit, or did it become something else?
I forgot to put my card up there. I'm going to go with a hit. I was thinking maybe on some ways, but you know what? Honestly, for the money, for how crazy it is, no one else is going to have one of these things. That's what I like about this. You're like, oh, y'all got tourbillons? Bet you'll have one of these twirly, spinny things. And I think that's really fun in this space to have something that no one else has. There's, it's like the opposite of wearing the Rolex. When you wear the Rolex, it's, you're like, oh, you're on the in crowd. But when you have the weird Defy 0G, you're like, oh my gosh, you thought to get one of those? That's awesome. That's brave. You're gonna get a thumbs up from everyone. One of the things I mentioned was that this watch with the solid gold bracelet It's actually not that much more. It's like $15,000 or $16,000 for the full-on gold bracelet edition. And I was like, if you want like a crazy watch, it's like a big gold case and bracelet and pretty like dazzling movement, like you could spend a lot more for a lot less. And so it's actually kind of a pretty good value. So all things considered, I would happily wear one of these weird things and just pray it doesn't break.
Oh, it will break.
Ripley, you've had a look of bemusement on your...
So, yeah, there's a lot I like about this, but it sounds like they made like an anti-tourbillon. Like, it does the opposite of a tourbillon. Instead of, as your arm moves through a bunch of different positions out the day, it keeps the balance in a singular position. It counteracts the natural positional variation, and it instead... It's kind of like it works in the total opposite way that a tourbillon's supposed to. So I need to do a bit more digging into this complication, but there's so much I like about it in that it's weird and like it's kooky. And if you can get it on a gold bracelet for only $15K more, I guess that's a bargain. But yeah, I do need to look in a bit deeper into the actual possible usefulness of this complication, because it may be counterproductive for on the wrist chronometry, is what I'm thinking. So yeah, I'll have to do a bit more digging.
A tourbillon that makes it less accurate because
it's not a tourbillon. It's like the anti-tourbillon. Like, at least if your arm was moving, if it was going like this, your arm's changing position. If it's keeping it weighted at the bottom. That's
Look, technically speaking, if you really want to get nerdy about it, this should be more accurate than a tourbillon, because a tourbillon is meant for a device like a pocket watch in a particular type of position. Most watchmakers will say the tourbillon is the motion of your wrist. That more or less averages it out. So this is theoretically supposed to keep the balance wheel in its best regulated position, or the position where it's least prone to errors, no matter what way you move your wrist. So I hear what Ripley's saying, but it's based upon the idea that tourbillons are somehow useful in a wristwatch, which they're actually in many instances less accurate. So a tourbillon, which is as accurate as a standard, 2824, is itself a miracle.
So this is just a miracle if it doesn't break, right? Like if this can make it its full service interval, that's a miracle. Yeah.
If this watch is engineered enough to put up with like 2 solid years of wear, I would be incredibly impressed.
Well, I have to say I'm impressed. I do like this. I gave this a hit. It just looks cool. I as we discussed last week, when watches get to a certain price, it doesn't actually matter A, whether they're set to the correct time, or B, whether they actually work, because it's just about the bling. So there we go. Guy, how did you vote?
I voted maybe. I'm not even. I mean, movement's a movement, and if you want accuracy, get a Quartz or a G-Shock. To a certain degree, I voted maybe because I was like, if I could get a Zenith, I wouldn't get this one. If I could get a skeletonized Zenith Defy, I wouldn't get this one. I think there's nicer ones. It's kind of a bit like you could take the Zenith off the logo and it could kind of be any brand. Whereas like the Defy, I had to look this up. The Defy Skyline skeleton really stands out to me as quite iconic of one brand that I really like. Whereas I just think this isn't as nice a design.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Well, Kevin is still having issues, so we'll come back to him. Hopefully he'll log back on. Right, next up, it's a brand I'll confess, it's a brand I struggle with. Ripley, you're 2 for 2 this week so far. That is the Nomos Tangente 38 date, 175 years watchmaking Glashütte watches. So, is this a celebration of 175 years of Nomos, or 175 years of just watches being made in glass? Are they actually celebrating somebody else's anniversary?
Yes, they're celebrating yes, in no uncertainty, they're celebrating the anniversary of watchmaking in their hometown of Glashütte. So that is what these are. Just like Baskin Robbins, you get 31 different flavors. They're all limited editions. At this point in time, they're also, you can't buy them online. They're sold out online. So you're just going to find these in the wild among the retailers like little Easter eggs in Pokemon. But with 31 different versions, there's a bit of something in there for everyone. They really range from kind of, muted utilitarian kind of earth tone type of deals to just full on color bombs. So you're going to find something in there you like. And I think it's kind of interesting they did this. It's almost bizarre that their whole Watches and Wonders presentation was just 31 iterations of this one watch that already existed. But, it is arguably their most popular model. And now there are all of these things out in the wild. And seeing them all side by side was kind of cool at the show, because up until that point, I hadn't seen them. Like, if you look back at our original news article, that was all of the photos we had at the time. And it was really interesting to see how some of these are expressed. And here's an assortment of ones that Jake shot while at Watches and Wonders.
Yes.
Did you get to see the one called the Ariel?
I was just about to ask about that.
I did. And so at the time of launch, Nomos didn't have photos of all of these on their website. Now, if you go over to Nomos's website, you can sort of scan through and see all of them side by side. And yes, there is that one. I was wondering if it was inspired by you. I can't imagine
Cool.
You named it after yourself, but maybe they named it after you.
No.
And it says Ariel on the case back.
They just want you to buy one. You've got to buy it now. That's the problem.
They're all sold out. That's the problem. I'd have to hunt one down.
You have to get them at a retailer. Like they still exist. You just kind of have to now track one down.
I think if you show ID that says
it.
you're called Ariel, you should go to the top of the queue and you should be given one.
You may be right, sir. You may be right.
The Ariel is actually one of the more like kind of classic and versatile ones. If memory serves, it's largely like a kind of a tan cream colored dial, and then you get these like little bright blue pops of an accent. So it's
it's none of us.
It's Ariel's skin against the water that he frequently swims in, if you want to look for its inspiration there.
The water of Genbi Valley.
Yes, I can work for Grand Seiko.
Okay, let's see. I'll scroll around and see if I can find it. There we go, the Tangente 38 Ariel. Ariel, do you feel that this watch really represents your world of beigeness? It's basically a beige watch.
Well, I don't have a lot of beige, so that means there's a big open beige hole in my collection. I also don't wear a lot of 38s, so definitely have a lot of openings for that. So yeah, there's nothing competing for attention quite like this in my collection.
Yes, prizes for anyone that now clips what Ariel just said. Anyway, right, let's give it a vote. So on the count of three, hit, miss, or maybe. Miss, maybe, hit, maybe from Ariel. I'm going to start. This is a miss. This is a miss for one reason only. They sent, I mean, it's a Nomos. I don't really like Nomos anyway, but it's a specific miss on this brand because when they sent out their press release, they didn't say it was embargoed. We spoke about it on the podcast, and just before it went out, I had to go back and edit all the content out about it because it turned out it was embargoed.
I mean, that is legitimately annoying. I mean, like, we put a lot of effort into this, and for them to be like, yeah, could you just negate all that work you did? It's not pleasant.
I mean, I wouldn't like to say we put a lot of work into it. That's maybe stretching it a bit.
I think we should have a very legitimate way of saying, no, there's no more embargo.
Yes, the embargo is broken because
there was an embargo. Now it's done. Okay,
it simply wasn't on the press release that we get sent. It just said, "Here's what we're bringing to Watches and Wonders."
One time, someone said, "No, there is an embargo." Why do we know that? Because it was in the file name. I was like, "Really, guys? The file name? That's how you told us?" Yeah.
Anyway, David, how'd you vote?
It's a hit. I'm not really. I used to deeply dislike Nomos for all kinds of ways, or reasons, I should say. And then I visited them. I spent some time in the manufacturer and with the designers and stuff, and I got to understand it a little bit better. And it stopped triggering me. I mean, sometimes I still get triggered. sometimes I will, at some point I will write a 3,000 word article on why that is, and it will be a deep psychological journey into myself and not Nomos. But I do actually like this exercise very much. I like the colors, it's bold. I love the fact that they launched it all at the same time. It's not stupid expensive. It's just a great exercise in watch design. I love it.
Would you want to own them all? Would you have to get them all?
No, but I could choose like 5 or maybe 8.
Yeah. Ariel, how'd you vote?
I said maybe. I think my primary issues with this is just the size. I have frequently worn a lot of Nomos watches thinking to myself, boy, if that was only several millimeters larger, I'd be more excited about it. I have a soft spot for Bauhaus design, and these are very practical watches. Like, you could easily wear this on a daily basis. To me, it kind of feels like an expensive swatch in the sense that it's quite simple. But I would just want it to be a little bit larger. And they could do it, and they have some larger watches, but just like the ones I like, they're just a little bit too small. I think the brilliance here is that you prove that your design is good when it can be done in so many different colors and still people know what it is. And I think that's what this exercise is all about. This design is so distinctive, we can render it in really any colors and you still know what it is. And I think they quite successfully did that. So there is, of course, a market for it. We're not going to all pretend it's the right size or design for us. But as an expression of the appeal of this design that Nomos makes, I think they made quite a bold statement.
Well, I would also like to understand the naming convention that they've used, because it doesn't feel like IKEA, whereby it's just a load of unpronounceable stuff with umlauts over it. It's like they've got one called Stop, Bubblegum, then one called Schnitzensturm.
I can tell you, Rick, I can tell you, when, from a brand point of view, when you're naming these many things, there's no convention. There's no way that Ariel and Flamingo Pink and Chili all came from some kind of rule. It was just like, quick, we need 30 names. Go.
Nach Gestang, Tiskenfrau Grau, or something, Dunkelbunt. Dunkelbunt.
This is like a schnapps consuming, casual Friday at the Nomos headquarters, and they were like, all right.
They appear to have got more drunk as a guy. Right. Tangente
Yes.
datum. Okay, white, understand that. It's tangente, it's the datum, so it's white. Then love, peace, and lemon biscuit. And then it just went stop, go, because one's red, one's green, and then it just went completely left field.
Yes.
Schnitzel, House and Weiss, or something.
Dunkelbunt, you can really tell how it was like they were getting more and more drunk. It really is very progressive in a way. It's impressive.
And if you have Dunkelbunt, you need to have the sport version, so there is a sport bunt in there as well. So yes, yes, there is a sport bunt, and it's actually quite a good looking watch. As
Super
Ariel
Sardine.
Do you think that they would have predicted that someone would have spent this much time dissecting their naming practices?
They thought they were going to get away with it. So drunk.
Little did they know.
The
We want
absolute
answers,
drunkest
German
watch
people.
collection.
We want answers. Every name. The full explanation.
If it wasn't for you pesky kids, we would have gotten away with it. Ripley, how did you vote?
I said it's a hit. The names all mean something in some language. But the stop and the go, those are both kind of largely white with either red or green accents. So they all kind of play into it somehow. I think it's fun. As Ariel mentioned, it speaks to the quality of a design when you can express it in this many ways and it still looks good and people know what it is. But it's also, I think, kind of just an expose of Nomos's successful use of unconventional colors in unexpected manners. They do color and weird bits of color almost better than anyone else. That's kind of what they're known for. 31 different versions is hard to make 31 decent looking watches. Obviously, some of these aren't necessarily the most outlandish or creative, like orange. But some of the other ones, it's a bit unexpected. And to have that many all side by side, I think it's also a little bit of a flex in terms of just kind of what they do best and doing that as using, one of their most popular models as the canvas to showcase it. So I thought it's a hit. It's fun. They're not going to do it again, obviously.
It's not just orange, Ripley, it's pop orange.
My apologies. I should have known orange would have been too simple of a name.
Guy.
I gave it a maybe. I've never liked the design that much of the original one. It's all right. It's a bit boring. But then I kind of like that they put some color on it, which is good. I've always complained that there's not enough colorful watches out there, and I think it's, good on them for going all colorful and all out. I don't think they needed quite as many. But it's cool that they've done it.
Yeah.
I think there's better Bauhaus watches out there.
Yeah. Cool. Well, before we go on to our last, due to the technical issues, we didn't do around the doors as to what everybody's wearing. So, David, where are you, and what do you have on the wrist?
I'm in Budapest, and I have nothing, but I have prepared a panda here. Never before bred in captivity.
A panda on the screen.
Yes.
Ariel, where are you? What are you wearing?
I'm in Los Angeles temporarily, and I'm wearing the Jeep version of the Marathon G-SAR. This is the Jeep Rubicon G-SAR.
Very cool.
Cool. Ripley?
Also in Los Angeles. And I am wearing the Brellam Pandile full black. It's got a very long name, but wearing the Brellam full black chronometer.
I think there is something missing here, which I think Guy needs to send you a hat. In fact, I think Guy should send us all hats, and we should try and all appear with D-Trash hats.
This hat is a one of one as well. This is a piece unique hat. Need to get this on wrong.
A piece unique. Good stuff, Guy. Where are you? What are you
I'm
wearing?
on the sunny south coast, and I have the D-Trash Fathoms Vigilante on today.
With some colour in it. Good stuff. Well, I'm in Scotland wearing a Panerai, but I was sent this. Don't know if you've seen these. It's not really something for your average Panerai wearer, it has to be said, but it's quite cool. The Anoma. It's an interesting newbie brand. It's kind of Hamilton Ventura-esque, a posh version, a dress version of the Hamilton Ventura, but quite an interesting, quite heavy for what it is. It's solid steel.
There's a big move in asymmetrical watches at the moment.
Yeah, it seems. My only concern about it is it's a bit pointy. So if where the strap's sitting means if you're the kind of person that wears your watch beyond the wrist bone, you know about it when you bend your wrist. But then I'm a Panerai wearer, so I also know about it because of that stupid clasp. But anyway, there we have it. Final watch then for today. Let's share it on the screen. It's another one of Ripley's. Ripley's rolling in it, so to speak. The black. Okay, here we go. Take a deep breath for this title.
Whoa.
New release: Blancpain 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe Quantiem Complete Phases Quantiem Complete Phases de Lune black ceramic watches. Thank you, David. Ripley, give us the SP on this one.
All of that is to say it is a complete calendar moon phase version of the Bathyscaphe version of the 50 Fathoms. Now in black ceramic and available with a matching black ceramic bracelet and the choice of 3 different dial colors. You get the dark blue one with the black bezel, the black one with the black bezel. They all have kind of sunburst dials, and then the green one with the green bezel. It's a triple calendar moon phase. Rick's going to be upset because it uses both a hand and windows to display its functions. It's a pretty cool watch and a very expensive bracelet. The bracelet costs thousands of dollars more than the watch itself. So, it is the first time they're offering a black ceramic bracelet for this one, but because they have made this model before in other materials, but it is it does get pretty pricey if you go for the full ceramic package.
Okay, let's give it a vote: a hit, a miss, or a maybe. I'll be entirely predictable. Miss, maybe. Oh, and a hit from Guy. It's obviously a miss because, as Ripley rightly analyses, you should not mix your date windows and your pointers. Use one or use the other. Don't use both. It is a cool watch, though. I do really like it. And I do wonder what would happen if Rolex and the Submariner added ridiculous complications that nobody needed to their most relevant dive watch.
Where would you put the date, though, if you were to do that? Because you can't put it at the bottom with the moon phase. Where would you put it?
Cyclops everything. I would put the Cyclops over the moon phase. And then the date, and then the month.
Well, you could put it at 3 o'clock where dates are supposed to be. But I don't care, because it ruins the symmetry anyway, because you've got all these stupid numbers around the outside. And a pointer hand that you don't need.
It's quite a
that obviously
subtle
ruins the symmetry.
hand.
It is a subtle pointer hand. Listen, I will be honest and say, of all the watch brands that do the mix and match well, the best, this actually does almost work. But I have to stick to my fundamental core beliefs. Otherwise, frankly, who am I? So there we go. David?
The more I look at this watch, it's just the voice in my head saying, this is the stupidest watch I've seen all week, probably all month, maybe the entire year. It's just a stupid watch. It is Swatch Group at its worst. Worst when it's like, what do we have? Oh, we have this movement, but nobody's buying a dress watch now. So what do? Put it in a sports watch. Yes, let's do that. Doesn't make any sense. And what people used to do is try and justify these luxurious dive watches and their stupid features like helium escape valves and crown locks and whatever else, because just in case you're diving or you're decompressing, you could technically use it. You could not technically use a complete calendar with a moon phase 299 meters below the surface. This needs not exist. It is typically the mix and match Swatch Group.
What about
kind of
if you were planning to go on a full
making.
moon diving holiday to Thailand and you needed to time a dive and a full moon party? Perfect watch.
It's like you were there at the design department.
Guys moonlighting at Blancpain. Yeah, okay. So I'm taking that's a miss then, David.
Yes, it sort of is.
Ariel?
I gave it a maybe because I think we're all honest. If someone just handed you one of these and be like, it's yours now, you'd be like, okay, I'll wear it. It's pretty. It doesn't have any reason to exist. We can make fun of all the dysfunction at Blancpain that prevents them from making anything that anyone actually thought about wanting. But at the end of the day, it's sort of like the best they could do with the parts they had. They're like, we need to come up with something. Management has said no to anything new. What if we just mix and match and paint it differently? Does that work? Oh, okay, we got approval. Let's do it. And it's, again, it's like if someone gave it to you, you'd have no qualms about wearing it, but justifying its existence or wanting to buy it yourself, that's a tough thing to do. You'd really have to have like one of those like Blancpain boutique credit cards, and you can only buy from there, and you have to be really limited. But it's cool, again, if someone handed it to you.
How do you think one earns reward points from Blancpain that you would save up? Like, what kind of
In my fantasy world, there's actually some rewards you get. Like, people buy these watches, there's no points. You never like build up something. There's, I guess, maybe in the background the brand's thinking about it, but you need to gamify buying watches a little bit more. I think so.
Ripley.
As David mentioned, a complete calendar moon phase dive watch in ceramic, no less, is about as useless as it gets. Needing to know the month, and not knowing the month when you're diving is a terrifying prospect if you're that out of it. But like Ariel said, they're cool. This is, I think, I gave it a maybe for two reasons. If you can appreciate that this is like Blancpain fully accepting that the 50 Fathoms is not actually a real dive watch that anyone is going to be diving with other than a weird flex to say they did it to their friends in 2024, and that it really is this kind of elevated status symbol, why not make it out of ceramic, put a complete calendar in it, put a moon phase in it. It's kind of a cool piece. Utterly useless and not practical, but it's kind of a cool piece in terms of how ballsy it is. Like, I struggle to think of many more complications that are less practical in a dive watch than a complete calendar. Perpetual calendar, annual calendar, certainly, sure, whatever. But it's you kind of have to appreciate them for it. And it's also like, you can get a Blancpain swatch in bioceramic or like a swatch moon phase. Those are both pretty hot right now. Or for tens of thousands of dollars, you can just get a Blancpain no swatch, not bio, but regular ceramic. And you can also get your moon phase. So, it's like the Uber swatch to flex on all the people who bought their swatch watches. It's the Uber swatch group watch. So yeah, in that regard, it's definitely a maybe. And the second reason it's a maybe is if you can enjoy the prospect of going into the boutique and having the sales associate try to explain to you why this is practical and relevant in your life, that's got to be worth some enjoyment whatsoever. So, that adds into my factory as well.
There's definitely a game to be played, secretly recording brand representatives telling you the positive spin on their most ridiculous watches. If anyone would like to be involved in illegally recording brand representatives while they pitch their most ridiculous watch, then do let us know, get in touch.
There is one key oversight I would like to mention in terms of functionality. In the event that you do need a complete calendar while diving, it's almost certainly saturation diving, and this does not have a helium escape valve. So what are we even doing here, guys? Like, this has just been totally irrelevant this whole time.
Guy, it's got a nice strap.
I prefer the fabric strap. I'm going to say I think it looks better on the fabric strap than the ceramic strap. I give it a hit. I think you're all crazy. I like the Bathyscaphe is one of my favourite watches ever. And I really like black ceramic watches. So for me, that's like two brilliant things coming together. And
oh, Guy, we never really knew him.
I'm just like, I think the whole kind of watch industry needs to probably stop judging watches on the functions that they had 50 years ago. Like, it's like, you get a Garmin if you're going diving properly, it's fine. Like, I've got a bezel on my watch. I use it to time pasta, not diving.
Sure, but then they need to stop designing them like they designed them 50 years ago.
No, because it's like it's a heritage piece, and it's a thing of beauty, and like we're not, but look, no one, what is it, 10, 15 grand? No one's buying 15 grand watches for their practical purpose. Like, you're not go on Amazon. There's way better ways to spend 15 grand and tell the time, or not spend 15 grand and tell the time.
I mean, would you want a supercar? But would you want a supercar that couldn't go fast? You have to judge them on their technical merit. Otherwise, we're just,
hold on,
it just
Ripley,
needs to be.
Because that is like a pet hate. Because why do I don't get supercars, but I see supercars and I'm like, they're really uncomfortable, and you either can't go fast in them or you lose your license for driving too fast. Like, get a track car, I understand. Supercars, I think, are ridiculous, but I think I've gone off track. It looks pretty. It looks pretty. It's a diet. You can use the bezel to time cooking your pasta. If I don't get the point of a moon phase on any watch ever, it's ridiculous. But if you want a moon phase, why not put it on something you can have a bezel on? It's fine. It's pretty.
Yeah, I actually think there needs to be a public inquiry into moon phases as to actually how genuinely accurate they are. Because I remain unconvinced that they actually reflect anything of what's actually going on in the sky.
That's your concern about moon phases is the accuracy?
I mean, I would 100%. I would take this watch without the day, without the month. I quite like the date, and without the moon phase, ideally. But
so just the Bathyscaphe then.
Yeah, with the little date. Yeah.
Yeah, you are in luck, sir. I believe they make that exact model.
The black ceramic's hard to find. Yeah, it's a nice design. Ish. I like it.
Ripley's got an idea. I can see the smoke coming out his ears.
Yeah, if we agree that the moon phase complication's useless, could that be repurposed? I mean, and keep in mind, brands spend a lot of time and energy creating really, really accurate moon phase complications. Mm. But if we all agree that it's kind of useless and it's just sort of this cool thing, could we repurpose the moon phase complication with more or less tracks things on a lunar cycle, 30.5 days or whatever it is? Could we repurpose that for a different use, like a surgery recovery tracker? It could be a menstrual tracker for women. It could be anything that you needed to track like 30 days, like a rent tracker or something where like, it's been this amount of time, but it's less than 30 days. So you should probably send the payment now because of wire time or something like that. Like could we repurpose the moon phase complication and give it a relevant thing? Because Guy uses his bezel for checking pasta, and that makes perfect sense. So could we redo the moon phase?
That's a good idea.
Well, Konstantin Chaikin did that and turned it into a tongue.
True, very true.
You need to get to David's point from like 2 weeks ago about we really need some women on this debate.
Who I'm sure will appreciate Ripley's idea of designing a menstrual tracker on a bath scarf. But there we go.
We'll see what the market's like for that.
See what the market. Okay. Do you think they prefer ceramic bracelets or fabric bracelets? Because anyway, on that note,
more durable the better.
We will finish the podcast recording. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, then thank you for listening and tune in again next week. If you are on a Blog to Watch Weekly Live, then we will say goodbye to the podcast folk, but hang on for a couple more minutes for some extra time. So to all the podcast listeners, see you again in a week's time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.